put out a post on my social media which I felt had a bit of a risk to it, but it ended up getting a lot of support, so I think we should go through it. So, a woman who's been following me for some time messaged me and asked me to share something of her experience with the audience because she felt that it would be very useful for people to hear. She asked to remain anonymous, and I read what she wrote to me, and I thought it was just such an important insight to share with everybody, but I felt like there was a bit of a risk to it. I was worried that there could be some kickback from me posting this, and getting kickback on social media is a really terrible experience. Let me tell you, I've had it a few times. I really don't like it. It really unsettles me because we're just trying to do good with this work. So to get an attack is never nice. It just felt like a bit of a risk, but it got a lot of support. People began commenting immediately. So I'm going to read the post out and then go through it afterwards. So, okay, here it is. After being drugged and raped, I started having intensive, intrusive thoughts that would consist of harmful sexual acts. It got so bad to the point it was happening with children too, so I thought I was a paedophile. It ruined my confidence and outlook towards life. Only after speaking to a rape counsellor did they inform me that this is normal. We start to worry that everyone wants us for sexual favours, that all interactions create paranoia, and thus leading to the conclusion that everyone will rape you. I now see these sexual images less after speaking to the counsellor, but they still occur. Okay. As soon as I posted it, this woman started getting support. I was so pleased about that. There was a number of people that actually wrote in the comment section and said that they have experienced similar dark thoughts after being assaulted or raped. I feel like this is something that's never really spoken about. I was so pleased that this woman was open and brave enough to write this to me. It gives us a very good indication of how something that's so that seriously violates you, something like rape, seriously violates you as a person, how that can just start twisting the brain. There were a lot of comments on this post. I posted it on all the platforms that I'm building on social media. There were a couple of people that wrote that they'd never thought that this would happen, that they were surprised because they've never seen this side of things, the dark side of how an experience like this can affect you. I believe there was so much support, and I felt this, the support for this woman, because she's recognised there's something going wrong and she's taken action. She speaks about going to see a rape counsellor. Just a little side note. Could you imagine working in these fields, being a rape counsellor or being a police officer that deals with rape? The constant, your day at work must be so challenging. How do you ever put that down? Like when it's 5 p.m. and it's time to clock off your shift, you can't just remove that from your brain. So my thank you to anybody that does that work. So this woman is going to see a rape counsellor. She's working through her thoughts. I feel like that got her a lot of support, and so she should have support for that. She's recognised something that's wrong in her head. She's realised it could go terribly wrong, and she's gone to action it. This is incredible, right? Now I want to ask a question that I wasn't sure whether I should ask on this video, but I want to ask it because I feel like it's interesting. I feel like the reason why I thought that there would be risk in posting this is because I was worried that people would say, you got to name that person, you've got to get that person, you've got to report that person to the police. They're a danger to society, because she very bravely, openly says in this, in her account, that it got so bad to the point it was happening with children too. So I thought I was a paedophile. I thought people would be angry at that, but they weren't. Can I ask, if this was a man who had messaged me this, would we feel different? Like, naturally, I don't know if it's naturally, but we do consider men to be more of a sexual threat than women. I think the statistics back our, is it preconceptions? Is that the right word? The statistics back that thought process. Most of the crimes of a sexual nature are committed by men. So if a man messaged me anonymously and said what this woman has messaged me, would that cause us more concern than the woman? I'm going to guess that most people would say yes, and there's reasons for that. So there was no backlash on this post, thankfully, because I feel like this is extremely insightful and great information. And you know what? It actually helps us understand the seriousness of this crime. This is not a crime that just happens to you one day. The next day you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, yesterday was a terrible day. That happened to me. I'm going to prosecute the person that did it to me, and now let's continue moving on with life. When something violates you, in particular in a sexual way, I feel like it just kind of twists your mind in a way that no other experience does. And that's if you are violated in a sexual way at any age. Even if something like this happens to you when you were a child and you've been groomed, manipulated and tricked into doing something, you don't at that time see the danger in it. You don't at that time recognize it to be something that you need to tell somebody about. It goes unnoticed for some years, but it wasn't hurting you physically. It wasn't upsetting you at that time. You were very young. That also twists your mind. It doesn't need to be violent for it to twist your mind. All violations of a sexual nature, when your body is violated, it's like your brain keeps score of that. Your brain records that. Just shows how it changes your life. And that's why you can never actually just put it behind you and move on. It's the power in this statement where this woman explains the dark nature. She started having intense, intrusive thoughts that would consist of harmful sexual acts. Now, if you've been following for some time, towards the end of last year, I reviewed a video that started talking about people's desires sexually, their fetishes, what turns them on. I do want to dive into that a little bit more. I wrote a couple of posts about it at that time, following the review that I did on YouTube. What was it called? Something about a baby fetish. And I got really interested in that because I wonder how much your childhood or how much certain events in your life affect what you desire in sex. There's got to be a connection there, surely. It's like, what is driving what turns you on? Now, definitely it could be what you're watching online, and that grows a desire, but it also could be your experiences in life, and why that turns you. It's like, what is ticking those boxes in your brain? I find it really interesting. So this woman has given us a kind of idea of how that experience, something you experience, can drive what your brain starts to move towards sexually. Again, intrusive thoughts that would consist of harmful sexual acts. She also mentions about, we start to worry that everyone wants us for sexual favours, that all interactions create paranoia, and thus leading to the conclusion that everyone will rape you. Rape is such a strong word, and so it should be. A life following rape is completely different. And I wish that we continue to speak about this more openly in society and in public, so that people can really understand the seriousness of it. When you hear about rape on TV, which you very rarely do because it's so horrific, nobody wants to hear about it and nobody wants to report on it. It's so... What do I want to say about this? It's like I want to show how it just affects every part of you, and therefore it should be considered a lot more seriously than it currently is. And maybe that's because of a lack of understanding of the general public, because of course, if it's not happened to you and nobody around you is speaking about it and nothing on TV is about it, then you're not going to understand. That's not your fault. So I'm really pleased about this post. I'm really pleased that the community that are following on social media were so encouraged, inspired, engaged from the post. Lots of people wrote that they learnt something new. Thank you to this woman for being brave enough to write that to me. And thank you to the community of everybody that's following this work and engaging on this journey. We are all learning as we go on one of the most important topics that we have to deal with, which is trying to understand crimes of a sexual nature, why they're happening, why people are doing them, the effects of them, so we can work towards preventing them from actually happening. Because the better we understand them, the better we can prevent them. Thank you.